How to crochet the efficient tee. Alrighty, so to get started with our tee, we need to gather our supplies. Now, I have listed everything you're going to need in the description box below, as well as the link to the free and PDF versions of this pattern. So definitely check that out below. But the yarn that I'm going to be using in today's tutorial is Knit Picks or WeCrochet Mighty Stitch. This is a bulky weight yarn. I'm using the color Wisteria, which is this really beautiful kind of lavender color. Basically, you just want any bulky weight yarn. For the actual sample, I used, or for the first sample, I should say, of the pattern, I used Billow, which is a cotton bulky weight yarn. I absolutely love how that turned out as well. So, grab your yarn, grab your hook. I'm using a 10mm hook today. Check your gauge, which is listed in the pattern, and then let's get started. Alrighty, so we're going to get started today with a slip knot. If you haven't ever done one of these before, it's super simple. Simply lay your yarn that's attached to the ball over the tail by making a loop and crossing it over, then reach through that loop, grab the tail that's attached to the working yarn, and pull, and there you go. And then just put that on your hook and tighten both ends for a nice snug fit. And now we are ready to get started. Now, this pattern is written in 5 different sizes. Each of these sizes are designed to be oversized. You can simply pick whichever one best suits your personal preferences. However, I want to make it very clear that you can make this pattern in any size that you want. And throughout the tutorial, I'm going to show you a few ways just how to make it fit you the best, whether that's, for the neckline, the sleeves, etc. For my size, I'm going to be making the smallest size listed in the pattern, which is listed as an extra small or a 28 to 36 inch bust. I am going to be chaining 44 stitches for my tee, and I will list the other counts up here in the top left corner for the other sizes that are listed in the pattern. However, this is going to be the front of your sweater. So this is going to be worked in one big rectangle. You'll work a specific round to leave a hole for the neck, and then you'll work all the way back down, fold those two pieces together, and seam the sides to form the actual body of our t-shirt. So I'm going to chain 44, and then I'm going to show you what I mean by making it fit any size. So let's chain 44 stitches. Okay, here are my 44 chains. Again, I am making the smallest size, so be sure to chain however many you need to fit your size. However, you could also simply chain however many stitches you wanted to, and then hold it up to your shoulders. And if you like how wide it is, if you like how it kind of hangs down a little bit on your shoulders to get you that nice oversized drop shoulder look, then it totally doesn't matter how many stitches it is. You can simply continue on. You can make a little note of it so that you can make future tees, but that is literally how simple this is. Just chain however many you want, hold it up to yourself to see if you like the way that it looks, and then get crocheting. It's that simple. Okay, so for row 1, however, we are going to skip the first 2 chains. This is going to count as our turning chain. It literally just gets us to the right height for our double crochet stitches. This chain 2 does not count as a stitch now and throughout the pattern. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that 3rd chain from the hook, and work a double crochet. And then we're going to work a double crochet in each stitch across. So simply yarn over, double crochet in the next stitch, and we're just going to repeat that all the way across our entire chain. This tee is specifically designed with the beginner in mind. My hope is that you can easily choose a size in the pattern or create your own size to fit you and your body perfectly. It's super quick, which is also intentional. I hope that you can make many of these tees. This is already my second one, and I know I'm going to be wanting to make another after this. I love this pattern, and I can't wait to continue to grow the Efficient collection. So I am just going to continue crocheting all the way down this chain for my row 1. I finished row 1, and now I'm going to begin row 2. Super easy. We're going to chain 2 and turn, and then we are literally just going to double crochet in each stitch across. So super easy. Again, I just chain 2 and turn. We're going to yarn over and double crochet in each and every stitch across. Remember that chain 2 at the beginning of our previous round does not count as a stitch, so we aren't going to work into that. And I will show you a good example of that once I get to the end of this row. Sometimes it can be mistaken as a stitch, and we want to make sure that it isn't for this pattern. That just gets us nice straight edges and makes seaming a little bit easier later on. But it's important to remember that those aren't stitches. So once again, I'm going to keep crocheting all the way across my work until I reach the very last stitch. Okay, I've made it all the way to the end of my row. If we look closely, we can see our first 2 chains that we skipped right here, and then our very last stitch is right here with the V just directly on top of that. So that's what we're going to work into for this very last stitch. You can always count. If you're making the same size that I am, you should have 42 stitches. I'll put the rest of the stitch counts up at the top corner here. If you decided to go the route of chaining however many that you wanted, you should just have 2 less chains than what you started with, because we skipped those first 2, of course. So really easy. Now all we're going to do is repeat row 2 until it is as long as you want it to be. So this is going to be our entire front panel. To kind of check on the length, you can just hold it up to your shoulders, and then wherever it hangs down, say like right where your hip is or past that, is how long it's going to be. For me, I'm going to work 18 rows, and that's what's listed in the pattern. Feel free to adjust that however you see fit. If you do decide to change it, make sure to make a note of it so that you can work the same amount of rows for the back panel, which will make more sense in just a little bit. So I am going to go work my 18 rows, and then I will meet you back here for the setup row to form our whole faux neck, and then continue down the back. So I just finished my 18 rows for the front panel, and now I am ready to do the setup row for the back, which is going to create our neck hole, and then we will crochet down the back side. So we're going to start off by putting our hook back into our work, and then we're going to chain 2 and turn. Now this row is going to be different depending on whatever size that you're doing. So remember, the pattern itself is linked down below in the description box. I'll also put the different stitch counts up in this corner. Just remember that I'm doing the smallest size in the pattern currently, and I'm going to be saying the numbers that are for that size. So just don't, listen, look at the other letters, oh my goodness, look at the other numbers or the pattern itself. Don't let me mess you up because I'm saying the wrong number for your size. Also, if you decided to kind of go with your own special size for this project, like we talked about at the beginning of the video, the way that I recommend to do this row, if your stitch count is different than any of the sizes, is to stick with the same stitch count for the neck as one of them. So here in just a minute, we are going to chain a certain amount and skip a certain amount of stitches. If you are doing a larger size than anything that's in the pattern, or a smaller size, or just something in between, I recommend choosing the row that is most similar to the size that you are doing. So for example, if I decided to do a smaller size than what I am doing now, I would stick with the size small neckline, which for me is 13 stitches, and then I would take the rest of my stitches, divide them in half, work the first half right here, skip and chain, and then work the second half. I hope that makes sense. I'll try to explain it more as we work across this row. Just remember also that if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments or send me an email to the address listed in the description box. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start this row. For my size, I'm going to chain 2 and turn, and then work across 13 stitches. Okay, there's my 13 stitches. Remember that stitch count will be a little bit different depending on the size that you've chosen. Now I'm going to create my neckline. So to do that, again, for my size, I am going to chain 16. And then I'm going to also skip 16. So we are chaining the same amount that we're skipping so that we don't change our overall stitch count. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I'm going to double crochet in this 17th one. I kind of like to put my finger through it because our gauge is so loose in this project. It's very easy to do so. And then I'm just going to kind of grab my hook, yarn over, and then place it in there. Once you kind of get your hook in this stitch, you can pull the yarn a little bit to tighten it. So I kind of just recommend getting your hook and your yarn over there, and then you can kind of finagle it and make sure it looks nice once your hook's in there. I know that one part is slightly tricky. And then we're just going to double crochet in each of the stitches remaining. So it should be the same amount as we had for the other shoulder. So if you remember, I had 13 stitches over here. I'm going to work in these last 12. And then, of course, this one equals 13. And then this setup row will be complete. So it's really simple. I hope the construction of it makes sense. I really love this construction, excuse me. I think it's, suitable for beginners. But again, I know if you're changing the size, it can just add a little bit of a tricky factor. So please reach out if you have any questions at all. And I am more than welcome to help you anytime. Okay, so I'm almost to the end here. Remember, we're never working in that chain 2, only in that very last stitch. Okay, so there's the end of our setup row, and now we are just going to do the same exact thing that we did for the front panel on the back. So we're going to chain 2 and turn and double crochet in each stitch across for 18 rows, or the amount that you did for the front. So if you maybe changed it to like 25 rows, work 25 rows on the back panel, that goes for any number. Just note that if you are changing the stitch counts, or the row counts, excuse me, always exclude this setup row in counting. So this counts as our setup row, but it doesn't count as a traditional row because it's very different, and we want to have that extra row for our shoulders. It just kind of helps it fit a little bit better. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn, and then I'm going to work my 18 rows. On this first row, you will be working into these chain stitches, and I'm going to go ahead and work down that way and just kind of show you how I like to do it. There's many different ways you can go about it, and I'm going to show you all of them, and kind of talk about the pros and cons of all of them, because I think it can be a helpful tip for some people, and then I will leave you to it. Okay, I'm almost down there. There we go. Well, if I can work that last stitch. Okay, it also looks like I have a knot coming up in my yarn, so apologies for that. Hopefully it won't get in the shot too badly in a minute. Okay, so there are many ways that you can go about working on this chain. You could do these back spine stitches. So what this would do is give you the same V's that you have on the tops of these stitches. However, that is going to make it a little bit tighter, and we're going to work back around this neckline here in just a little bit with a little collar to finish it off better. So my favorite way to do it is just to work like a standard chain. So I'm just going to hold my chain, nice and neat. It's going to be a little bit tricky because we did, skip some stitches and then we turned our work after all of that. So it's possible that it'll be twisted, but I'm just going to do my best and work into just one strand of every stitch, just like I would. I think I might have skipped a stitch there. Yeah, there we go. Just like I would for a traditional chain. I also recommend counting your stitches after you finish this section. If you happen to be off by one, just place an increase somewhere. You're not going to be able to notice. Same goes if you have one extra stitch, just decrease one somewhere. Totally not a big deal to stress over. Just make sure that you have the right stitch count coming out of this row. So I'm going to go finish up this row, work my next 18, take care of this beautiful knot here, and then I will meet you back here to seam our tee and create the sleeves, hem, and neckline. Alrighty, so I have now finished all 18 rows for the back panel of my tee, and now I am just going to cut my yarn. I'm going to intentionally leave a little bit of a tail so that I can use this to seam up one side of the tee, just to avoid leaving in that extra end. It's totally not a big deal. And then I'm just going to yarn over one more time and pull that tail all the way through to secure it. Now we are ready to seam this tee. Now I'm going to be using the mattress stitch today, but you can use any seaming technique that you prefer. You could slip stitch up this whole side, you could do the whip stitch, whatever you prefer. I just personally enjoy the whip stitch, so that's what I'm going to do. Now you could also at this point kind of pick a right or wrong side. That is also completely up to you. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to go with this being my right side. So I'm actually going to flip this over again so that this is my wrong side. That means that my right sides are going to be sandwiched together so that when I finish seaming, I can just flip it inside out and that seam will be on the inside. With mattress stitch, it's pretty invisible, so it really doesn't matter, you know, which side you do it on. But I kind of like doing it on the wrong side and then being able to flip it over. So I have my tee laid out here. Let's turn it actually right side up so that you can get a better representation of what it looks like. So up here we have our neck hole, and then it is just one big long piece of fabric right now, and we are going to seam up both sides, leaving holes for our arms. Now this depth is going to be different depending on what size that you are doing. If you are doing a size that is not included in the pattern, if you're kind of doing it yourself, I recommend going with whatever depth for the sleeves that you think is going to fit you the best based on your positive ease preferences, etc. I myself am going to be leaving 6 inches up at the top here. Now, if you did meet exact gauge for this pattern, then it's actually really simple to do that. You can just kind of count your rows because each row is 1 inch for this gauge, but you could also just take a ruler and measure out 6 inches. I myself am just basically going to eyeball it. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. So I know this right here is pretty close to 6 inches, and that's exactly what I'm going to go with. Ideally, you would also put a marker here, and let me grab one. Okay, grabbed a couple markers, and now I'm just going to put these at the spot that I marked with my fingers. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm just going to pin both of these sides together. This is just going to make it a little bit easier to tell when we should stop seaming. And then I'm going to go ahead and save myself a little bit of time and just do that on the other side as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to put a marker on the opposite side. And again, it's just going to make seaming a little bit easier when we don't have to count all that out again. So now I have the tail that's actually still attached to my work over on this side, so I'm just going to do it first for the sake of this tutorial. Now, to do the mattress stitch, it's super simple. Simply just sandwich your 2 ends together. Try to line up the rows as best you can. I know that can be a little bit tricky, but just kind of, it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, just kind of do the best that you can. So I have my needle threaded. I'm going to go up through the side of this top panel, and then I'm going to go back down on the bottom panel, and then I'm going to go back up on the top panel, and that's it. Up and down in kind of a zigzag motion, just like this. And I'm going to do this all the way up until I get to that marker. So like I said, this distance is going to be a little bit different for you depending on what size that you've chosen to make, and also how many rows that you decided to do for your body. But for me, I've got a good little distance here, so I'm just going to finish seaming all the way up. Okay, so I've made it all the way up to my marker here. Now I'm just going to go around these two panels once more just to make that extra secure and pull that nice and tight. And then I'm going to go back down some of these stitches just to secure this tail. So there's really no exact way to do this. I like to just kind of go back down a little ways to make that nice and secure so that this seam is not going to come undone. So just kind of a couple more here. That should be good. And then I will just trim this end. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and go do the same exact thing on the opposite side of my tee. Weave in any ends that I may have remaining. And then I will come back here and we will work both the neckline and the hem next. Okay, so I finished seaming in the other end, and I also wove in all the other ends that I had remaining, and now I am ready to work my neckline and hem. So I'm going to go ahead and do the neckline first. I'm going to start by flipping my tee so that the right side is now facing me. Again, with a project like this, it doesn't matter all that much. Oh look, there's another end. That one's actually already woven in though, so I'm just going to clip that real quick. Anyway. So it right and wrong side doesn't really matter with a project like this, but I do still like to differentiate just for personal preference. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and start the neckline. Now to do this, we're going to grab the same hook size that we've been using for the rest of our project and our yarn, and simply join it to any stitch along this neckline. So you can join it to any of these stitches that we left on the front panel, any of these chain stitches. I recommend going kind of close to one of the shoulders just to hide that join a little bit, but it doesn't matter all that much. You shouldn't be able to see it too bad. Okay, so bring that up, chain one to lock it in place, and then we are simply going to single crochet all the way around. So place one single crochet in each stitch and chain around. If needed, you might want to place a couple of stitches along the shoulders as well, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I have this row right here. That is what I did when I skipped those stitches for the neckline. I'm just going to do a couple of single crochets there as well, just to kind of hide that, make it a smooth finish. I'm also crocheting over my tail so that I don't have to weave that in later. So I just did that for the first few stitches. Now I'm ready to finish crocheting across. And I'm just going to work all the way around my neckline here, placing one single crochet in each stitch and chain. Alrighty, so I worked in every stitch and chain around, and now I'm just going to slip stitch to this very first stitch to secure that round, and work a slip stitch, and there we go. So now I'm just going to cut my yarn, and the neckline is now complete, and the hem is worked exactly the same way. So I tied off that neckline. I'm going to go ahead and jump down here to my hem. And it's going to be exactly the same thing. I'm going to join in any stitch. Again, I do kind of like to go close to like one of the side seams just to hide it a little bit. I'm going to join my yarn exactly as I did before. So just lay that new strand over the hook, pull it up, chain one to lock it in place, and then simply single crochet in each stitch and chain around. Again, I'm going to crochet over my tail as well so that I don't have to weave it in later. I just really like saving that little bit of time. And that's all there is to it. It's really simple. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the hem as I did for the neck. I'm just going to do one, my yarn is all tangled up in here. I'm just going to do one round, one single crochet round, but you can totally work more or less rounds if you prefer. Just do whatever suits your preferences. But I'm just going to crochet in each stitch and chain around the hem here. Okay, I've crocheted all the way around the base of my tee. Now, just like before, I'm going to slip stitch to this very first single crochet to slip stitch into it, and that's it. So you can cut that yarn, weave in your ends, and now let's move on to the sleeves. Alrighty, so we are now ready to work our sleeves. Now, just like the majority of this pattern, it is very customizable how you decide to work these. I do have specific stitch counts listed in the pattern, and I'll put those up at the corner here. But feel free to just kind of do your own thing on the sleeves. So I am going to bring my hook and yarn back up, and I'm going to join my yarn to any stitch along or around the tee here. I kind of like to go close to the seam, again, just to hide that join. It's not exactly necessary, but I do prefer the look of that. And I'm going to join my yarn by pulling up my yarn like I have been, and then I'm going to chain 2 to get to the right height for my double crochet. So I've brought my yarn up. Now I'm just going to chain 2. And there we go. Now, like I said, I'll put the numbers up here according to your size, but basically you're just going to double crochet evenly around this entire opening. So I'm going to work 24 double crochet stitches, and I'm just going to place about 1 in every round. That'll change a little bit, but that's basically how it's going to be. So I'm just going to double crochet all the way around this opening. I'm going to go for about 24 total stitches. But as long as you're working evenly around, the final stitch count doesn't matter so much. So don't put too much stress into that exact number. Alright, but that is 3. There's 4. Alrighty, so I have worked all the way around my opening here. I actually ended up doing 23 double crochets instead of 24, and that's totally okay. I just kind of ran out of spaces to put them, but as you can see, it's definitely nice and open, and that's exactly what I want. So now I'm just going to finish off that round by slip stitching into that very first stitch, and then I'm going to chain 2 and turn. We're going to turn even when we're working in the round on the sleeves because it's going to make the sleeves and the tee body match since the tee was worked in rows. So you could totally, ignore the turning step. You could just work in the round if that's what you prefer. But I kind of like the look of turning and matching it with the body. So now all we're going to do for round 2 is double crochet in each stitch around. So I'm just going to do that. Super, super simple. Place 1 double crochet in each stitch around this sleeve. Alrighty, so I finished that row, and now I'm going to slip stitch to my very first stitch to finish it off. And now for the very final round of our short little sleeves here, we're going to chain 1 and turn and work 1 single crochet in each stitch around. So you can repeat round 2 if you'd like your sleeves to be longer, but I want these to be short. So I'm just going to finish off by working 1 round of just single crochet. And then we will be done with our first sleeve. Okay, there's that completed single crochet round. I'm just going to slip stitch into the first stitch once again, cut that yarn, and now our first sleeve is complete. So go ahead and repeat those same exact instructions for the opposite sleeve, and then I'll meet you back here and our tee will be complete. And there we go, our tee is complete. I absolutely love this pattern and the finished result, and I hope that you do too. As for blocking, if you would like to block your project, I put some instructions on how to do that in the pattern, which is of course linked below. Me personally, I actually don't block it. I just kind of let it hang on my body and let that block it for me. I just think it kind of works better that way, but you can block it if you see fit, of course. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you enjoy your finished tee.
you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable to follow along with, and I also hope that you love your finished object. Be sure that I have included all of the links to the materials that I used, the materials that you'll need, and all of the links to the pattern in the description box below, as well as links to my other social media platforms and pattern shops. So just be sure to check all of that out if you are so desired to do so. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any future tutorials, and then click that notification bell right beside it so that you get a little alert every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy making. Bye!